I'm joined now by a civil engineer from Truth and Energy, Hugo Kruger. Hugo, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. From a technicality or technical point of view, is there something that needs to be done to ensure, one, we manage the risk of future load shedding, but also we improve our generation capacity?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Yeah, there's a few things that are not being mentioned, or at least I haven't seen it mentioned, neither in Eskom's statements nor with some of the public commentators. And I just say the sources of my information work in the Eskom supply chain, but for obvious reasons, they'd rather remain anonymous. The auxiliary systems at Eskom is posing a problem for them. The cooling water system, notably. It is a big issue at some of these plants. And they were all flagged in the VGB energy report last year. Now, you would recall, and your listeners might recall, that December there was a fire at Kriel Power Station. I wrote an article in Independent Online on this one. I said, well, this fire was rather surprising. You're knocking out that unit because Eskom had the knowledge that it was going to occur, that it was a risk waiting to happen. Okay, now we jump to these 6 units coming out all at once. You know, I don't like people who tell me that things just happen randomly. There's usually a reason for something. And I would suspect that if I were to open up the VGB energy report and those things that were flagged, that many of those issues still haven't been addressed because those were major risks to future occurring load shedding on the core power station. So the question should ask is, the maintenance that we have seen, and I do praise Eskom, I mean, I don't want to step on them for what they've done until now, but has that been sufficient to address all the issues that were wrong in the auxiliary systems in particular? And I suspect that if we start digging and do the root cause analysis, we'll find that some of those things were not attended to. That would be my go-to hypothesis, okay? Yes, they were unlucky in the sense that your emergency reserves ran out, that 6 units came out at once, but it sounds to me a little bit like a black swan event, a 1 in a million chance event that they're trying to sell to the public. Something doesn't add up.
Yeah. Not attended to. Are these difficult systems, auxiliary systems to deal with, to maintain? Are these costly auxiliary systems to maintain? I'm trying to get to the point of why would they not be attended to, or why would we, do interim measures and, lack of a better word, cut corners?
Yeah, so I want to make an accusation of cutting corners. Eskom had a plan that was essentially targeting partial load factors. So little small errors in the system, you had to fix all of them and then slowly you jump up. Because one of the reasons we had so much load shedding was bad management systems. I mean, this was the root cause, actually. It was not the age of the plant, for example. And that system has been changed, right? So the question should be what was prioritized, because in any organization you have a limited budget and you can't do all at once. And at the same time, you have to maintain a certain level of electricity supply in the country, otherwise we have load shedding. So you can't, for example, shut down all the units, and do a complete overhaul or midlife extension of the plants. But my question is, what was prioritized and what was the system or the subsystem, if you will, on a plant, which triggered this event?
Yeah.
That, to me, has not been well communicated by Eskom. Okay, and then the question is, did they know that that system was underperformant, was running outside of its parameters? Because they're citing boiler tubes. Now, I want to explain boiler tubes to the public because this is being saying as if it's a complicated problem. Boiler tubes usually occur when you run your auxiliary system, your cooling water system, particularly outside of its parameters, when you have erosion outside of the pipes, for example, or when you have bad coil quality. Now, I know, for example, the coil quality has improved. So if the coil quality is not the issue anymore, it tells me that the other supporting systems are not being attended to, or maybe the maintenance is not adequate, or maybe they took the risk of saying, well, this system is still semi-okay, we're not going to do maintenance on this plant, we'll do another one. And then something triggered the event. Okay. So that's how I would that would be my working hypothesis. I'm willing to be proven wrong. I'm saying this if Eskom can come clean as to what is the real root cause. But to give the public a statement like we ran out of emergency reserves and something tripped and this was an unlucky event, I'm sorry, but that's taking our intelligence a bit for granted.
Yeah.
We shouldn't accept that type of explanation. I want a detailed explanation, at least somebody with a technical background, and I haven't gotten one yet. And that concerns me a little bit.
So 6 units out and immediately we are back at stage 3 load shedding. What does that tell us about what we need to do to manage that particular risk? Yes, you've already told us fix the auxiliary systems, but still it means if 6 units go out, we are on stage 3 load shedding and we don't have backup.
Yeah, and that as a country is the big crisis, because as an individual, there's only so much you can do. I mean, you can do a solar panel, you can do a battery, you can do a heat pump. There's lots of things to reduce your demand, and some of those things are even economically advantageous. But on a nationwide level, we need Eskom to work. There's no economy in the industrialized world that works without a stable electricity supply. There's no rich country without electricity. It simply does not exist. And if we believe in economic growth and fixing unemployment, then unfortunately Eskom has to be fixed. Now, Eskom needs to have the budget available. Is the money sufficient? They need to have the technical team, the knowledge management, all of those things we should insist on. And this is the responsibility of Eskom's board. Okay, because the board should appoint the executive. In South Africa, we have this weird thing where the minister sometimes does it, but doesn't matter. And the board should be held accountable. So the people should come and explain here to you is the board and the executive. And they should tell us what happened and why. How will we assure that it won't happen again? Because when you say emergency reserves run out, is that because we didn't have diesel supplied? Is that because the pump storage levels was low, so our emergency reserves are weather dependent? That's a risk. And if that risk still exists in the system, what is their contingency plan to put it in place? That's what we should ask again for them. Is what are you going to do to ensure this does not occur again? I'm sorry, I've looked at some of the commentators and I've looked at some things in the news, and until today, I don't feel like I've got an adequate response for that yet.
Yeah.
Okay, this is just what I'm saying to the public. Now, again, I don't want to fearmonger. I don't want to step on the toes of the operators, because an operator failing, working in a very bad system, sometimes, it's not always his fault. It's a failure of a system, etc. There's a lot of things, but ultimately the board is responsible for this, right? This is how it should work. And in a country like America, for example, some years ago, Texas, there was a blackout for a few hours. The entire board resigned. Because the standard internationally, and this is the standard South Africans should insist on, is a few minutes to a few hours maybe of blackout per year. Okay, we sometimes had it per day. It's an unacceptable level, and we should not accept mediocre standards from Eskom. So 6 units out, sure, I understand last year it was out, so I can't expect perfect performance this year. But we should now start on holding them account to the standards that we expect of a modern, developed economy.
Right.
And that is what South Africa is, because we have a responsibility to Africa with electricity supply. If there's no electricity, we have instability at home and abroad. There's a lot of crisis that can come from it. And we're saying to the government, this is a critical element. I want you to tell me, why didn't this occur? And I think we can accept it maybe this time, but next time it occurs, we should expect some people to resign for accountability. And that's the standard we should set ourselves.
One of the commentators saying, well, even if, for example, we were to get private generation capacity to give us 10,000 megawatts, we have a problem of a transmission and distribution grid that is constipated, for lack of a better word.
There's nothing to it. So Valley Paliachi has been pushing this. Ryan, the renewable lobby in South Africa, has also been pushing it because the transmission grid is congested and new projects cannot come online. But just for somebody to understand, South Africa has about 50,000 megawatt, 50 gigawatt. Our demand is 30 gigawatt. If all the units work, we don't have load shedding. So the transmission line, yes, there is something to it, because you don't want new players, and some of the core stations will go out, and the sun is not always where the transmission line is. So there's nothing to it. But the question I always ask is, what is wrong with the existing system? Because if all the coal units theoretically work at Eskom, this would be a debate about decarbonization and the future electricity mix in the IRP. And I would like to have that debate. But the question of load shedding is a question that the current system, the current generation system, is not being maintained. And that's where I differ a little bit with him. I'm saying, no, the coal stations are underperformant. Now, when a coal station is so badly performing, you have two things. Either you fix it, do a mid-life overhaul, or you say you're going to take the asset off. But when you do that, you need to have a replacement. Now, Pearl Power Station is being replaced in 3 years from now. What is government's plan to bring a capacity online? Do they think we're going to build a transmission line, which takes 10 years to build sometimes, to some of the areas in the country, to replace that power station? Or are we going to build something on top of it? We're going to bring natural gas from Richards Bay, or we're going to build nuclear, which takes 15 years. There's a lot of options to replace generation. But I would like to have a concrete plan from government to say, not just to address the current load shedding risk, which is fixing the system, that's the easiest way in my view, but also what is the future? What is the future problem? Yeah. Because if you don't do maintenance now, if you don't extend, or if you don't plan for new generation, next year you're going to have me on again and say what happened, because we're going to have load shedding again. And I would like to have a clarity of a plan from government and from Eskom coming forward. And so far, it seems a little bit vague as to what we're doing.
clarity of plan. Hugo Kruger, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. He's a civil engineer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
With Truth and Energy. His assessment then of the current challenges and what could potentially be future challenges if there's no clarity of what exactly went wrong, why did it happen, and what is the mitigating plan going forward.